Hee hee, you're watching Fight Feed, little boys.
What is going on, Fight Feeders? I am back in my office. I was traveling for quite some time, officially back in Arizona and ready to get this content pumping for y'all. So what you should expect from me in the next, week or so is just a lot more content. I was unable to shoot as much as I would like to when I was traveling. So you're going to get a lot more of that Fight Feed content that you guys are all looking for, hopefully anyways. And that starts with this video, which is going to be my picks, predictions, breakdown of the UFC Vancouver card that is happening on October 18th, 2025, this Saturday. We got a main event between Rainier de Ritter, Brendan All-In Allen. We got a co-main event between Kevin Holland, the Trailblazer, versus Mike Proper Malott. So we've got some fun fights on this card. Not the greatest of cards I've seen, but not the worst. Very excited anyways, because guys, I'm going to keep it positive, right? That's what this channel's all about. I just want to be a positive person. I don't want to be fucking out here bitching and moaning all the time. I am happy even when we get like the Tatsuro Taira versus Park cards, because I fucking specifically love watching MMA, but like very particular to UFC, obviously. I wish I was tuned in more for some of the other shows, but regardless, I'm excited nonetheless. We'll go ahead and dive in. We're going to start with a banger in the opening of this card, and then we're going to go through the rest of them. Before I dive in, I just want to say one of the most important people is on this card, and that is my boy, Davey Grant, Mr. Norman Osborn lookalike himself. And I'm thinking he's going to get it done again, guys, but you're going to have to wait to see my breakdown for later in the card. But let's go ahead and dive into the first fight on the card between Tainara Lisboa and Melissa Croden. All right, guys, so breaking down this fight between Melissa Croden and Tainara Lisboa. So Melissa Croden's debuting in the UFC in this fight. Not only debuting in the UFC, but a hometown hero of Canada. So she's going to be in her hometown, making a debut. Lots of pressure on her. We've seen this happen with a lot of fighters, right? Some of them can come in there and there is no hometown pressure because they just run that shit, right? They go out there and they make a statement for themselves, get a huge win. But we've also seen the opposite, where fighters have that added pressure of being in their hometown. And then when you mount that pressure with also being your debut in the UFC, it's a bit hairy, bit tricky, right? I think, guys, in this fight, the safe pick for most is the Tainara Lisboa, given that she has more experience, obviously, in the UFC. I think from a record standpoint, 2 extra fights in her professional career. And guys, just a quick note. As you know, for Fight Feed, I break down these fights. I provide all kinds of info. I haven't really gotten too much feedback from you all on whether or not you enjoy me kind of going down the nuts and bolts, breaking it all down for you. My last fight pick video, I didn't do that. I just kind of went for it. Just gave you guys like who I was picking. But obviously you have the ability to read, of course. You can take a screenshot of this, whatever you want to do. But guys, let me know below. Do you enjoy when I break it all down, like going from the tail of the tape all the way through like the red flags and the other variables? Or do you like maybe just having that on screen and then I can break down and just give you my take on the fight? Let me know in the comments. I'd truly appreciate that. Diving back into this breakdown. And guys, on this card, we have not only Melissa Croden, I guess I got it wrong, right? I spelled it Corden and then there's Croden. I don't even remember what it is. But regardless, Melissa Croden is the first debuting fighter who didn't even get the locked character outline. She straight up got a gray background as her picture on the UFC website. And for whatever reason, that made me laugh out loud. I took a screenshot of that, and that's why we've got her right there. And in my opinion, guys, this fight, I just think that Croden's probably got the sharper, more polished striking in her arsenal. I think that she also stays pretty long behind her jabs, doesn't get too overzealous with throwing certain combinations. I think she's kind of usually pawing at her opponent, maybe throwing like 1 to 2 strike combos, and then definitely uses her ability with clinch game. And then even if she gets it to the ground, she's got very good top pressure on the ground. I think that when I look at Melissa Croden's fights compared to Lisboa, Croden's got a bit of a dog in her, right? She's gonna she's going to fight tooth and nail. There was a fight that she had previously in her career where she actually fought someone, Cavalcanti. She fought Cavalcanti in that fight. She got hurt a few times, but was able to continue staying in that fight all the way through the end without getting finished. And I think that shows her durability. But also in this fight, I think that if she keeps her composure, she's not affected by this being the hometown fighter, not affected by the hometown or being the debuting fighter. If she keeps that composure, if she's able to mix in that clinch game, getting Lisboa against the cage, just basically using her strength to nullify the game of Lisboa, not giving Lisboa the ability to strike at range with her kicks, I feel like Croden can get the W here. So what I'm going to do, which I don't normally do, is I'm actually going to ride with hometown debutante. I did this in the last women's fight in Perth, and it paid off handsomely for me. I didn't actually make any money, but it paid off because I got an extra win in the pick tracker. But regardless, I'm going with Croden on this one. Lisboa is good, but I feel like given the fact that when you look at her, she does have a high finishing rate at 86%. I just think that in this matchup, you've got Croden, who's a bit bigger, not only in height, but also has that reach advantage. And I think that Croden's got a style where that extra oomph to her physicality will kind of make that difference if she's not caught. But Tainara Lisboa, like I said, guys, is probably an easier pick for most because of her UFC experience. So it's not really that crazy if you go that way in this matchup, but I'm going Croden. I think she'll get it done. I see it being done likely by, I shouldn't say decision. I should say a finish, right? She's got a 100% finish rate. I could see Croden getting a sub here. Just given that obviously Lisboa's 2 of her 3 losses in her career were by sub. I think Croden could definitely get a sub if she's able to, get her to the ground and then maybe just mount that pressure from top position, transition into like a side control. I don't really know what her chops are in the jiu-jitsu realm, but I know she does have a submission on her record. So not completely out of left field for that. The one thing I do want to call out, Croden, whatever the fuck her last name is 34 years old. So they're both 34. I'm going Croden. And our next matchup, guys, we got Azamat Bekoev versus Yousri Belgaroui. I can't remember how to say his last name. So this fight is actually pretty interesting. I'm a big fan of Azamat Bekoev. He's a fucking beast. He's only got 2 fights in the UFC, believe it or not. But his ability to really just implement his game plan and stay strong with his striking, even in the Loader fight where he unloaded, no pun intended, all over Loader to a point where I was worried. I'm like, this guy is throwing so many punches, he might gas out. I just think that Bekoev has a style that is super fun because he's a Russian fighter. He definitely has some ground game, but he is a guy that wants to keep it standing and knock his opponents out unconscious. So how can you not love that? Now, on the other side, you got Yousri Belgaroui. He is, while his record might not say it from an MMA perspective at 8-3, he is a decorated kickboxer. Actually had, I think, 2 different bouts in kickboxing with Alex Poatan Pereira. They actually are very close friends coming out of those matchups. And if you are any type of fan of Pereira, you have seen Yousri Belgaroui all over with the Poatan train, right? He's in the camp of Poatan, always with him. Like whenever Poatan's got a fight, he's there in the corner, always there for him. And they seem to be very close friends. I've watched some of Alex's YouTube channel, and they're in there, they're doing their thing, shooting arrows and shit. Belgaroui's like I said, well-decorated kickboxer, 6'5", a very tall and rangy opponent, especially at middleweight with a 79-inch reach. I think this fight is pretty interesting because where Azamat is lacking physically, I think this fight's interesting because you have Belgaroui, who's got a lot of those advantages from a physicality standpoint. He's 6'5", so he's going to have about a 5-inch height advantage. He's going to have that really long reach advantage as well. But although Bekoev's going to be lacking in that department, where I think this fight ends up going is Azamat Bekoev gets the W, likely by KO, because what I've seen from Ogori in the past is, although he has these physical gifts, it seems like at times he has a very difficult time implementing that range, right? Staying at range, landing shots at range, hurting his opponent, getting finishes. Like, really, when you look at it, he has 6 of his 8 wins by KO, so it's a decent finishing rate. But when he's unable to get the finish, it seems like he definitely struggles quite a bit. And I think in this case, what we're probably going to see is Bekoev just weathering that storm from that range, and also using his style, his striking, which Bekoev, what he does very well, I feel like it's almost like a DDPS charge in. He has a great ability to shuck off the offense of his opponent, get into range where he can start landing his strikes. And I think once he gets into that range and Begori's on the back foot, which I feel like Begori doesn't always do that great on the back foot either. He definitely, especially in the octagon, once his back's against the cage, this fight is going to Bekoev. And I think that Bekoev still also has that ground game that he can implement should he need it against Begori. I think that Azamat Bekoev wins, likely by I would say like a second round submission or potentially a second round KO. I do think Belgaroui could potentially outlast that first round, but guys, I don't know what the odds are. If you are thinking Belgaroui maybe has made adjustments, he hasn't fought since he lost on his last matchup that was on Contender Series. So if you're feeling like he's made adjustments that are needed here, then you could definitely go his way in getting a win here, potentially hurting Bekoev. But Bekoev's only lost 3 times in his career. I just think this guy he's one of those dudes that every time you see him go out there, he just kind of continues to show you more parts of the game that you might not have seen in the previous fight. I think he gets it done, and that is who I'm picking to win. Our next matchup, we got Stephanie Luciano versus Ravena Oliveira. So taking a look at this one, guys, these two fighters are pretty similar when you really break it down. Like, their age is not too far off here. Obviously, the height pretty close there. Reach, same thing. Obviously, one thing to call out that's a big deal here is that Luciano is not only younger, but also a lot more active in recent times, right? Oliveira hasn't fought since 2023. So she's going to have a 2-year layoff that she's coming into with this. But what I want to say about that, though, is that Oliveira, while she did lose in her debut in the UFC, this is a strawweight matchup at 115, okay? Oliveira was able to find success against a fighter that's on this card in Lisboa while being the undersized fighter, right? She fought 2 weight classes above what she normally fights at in that matchup against Lisboa, was only 133, I think, when she weighed in, and was also able to find success in taking her down and getting control. She did lose the fight, but that to me says she is likely to have a physicality advantage here, especially if she was able to go up 2 weight classes and bring down or have moments of success against a bigger opponent. I think that says quite a bit about her ability, but also she's got that dog in her. She's got 100% finish rate, which on the side of Luciano, she is not likely to find a finish, just statistically speaking, more likely to just get a decision, by outstriking and staying at range. But I think the fact that Stephanie Luciano in her last matchup, although Sam Page Hughes is a dog in and of herself, she was able to really dictate where that fight went by just controlling and getting Stephanie Luciano to the ground. I think that Ravena Oliveira is going to be able to do that in this matchup, just given her physical attributes. Although she's had a layoff, she's still only 28 years old, still very young. I just think that she has a strong chance of owning in the grappling department and then finding that finish, whether it be a submission or maybe like a ground and pound TKO. But Luciano's still very good. And if she is able to stay at range, keep her strikes clean, keep those takedowns away, Luciano can likely edge out a decision. But I am going to go with Oliveira here. And I think that's the only person I know on this card that is actually like a underdog, right? I've done a little bit of research there, and I think she's the only one, at least I can remember. I've been trying to look at odds a little bit, guys. I don't like to, but trying to, because you guys will comment certain things about that. So I just want to make sure I am doing that for you all who are watching these videos. But I'm getting Ravena Oliveira to get the win. The next fight on the card, guys, we got one of my favorites in Drew Crimson Chad Chin Dober versus Kyle Prepolec. This is an interesting matchup, guys. The UFC is undefeated at this shit. Like the fact that they have, two lightweights, 36 years old, pretty similar in size, exact reach. Like it's crazy. Prepolec in his second stint in the UFC, definitely going to want to get a win in this one, especially in his hometown. Unfortunately, things didn't go his way on the short notice matchup against Saint Denis. Regardless, he now has a very tall task, not that tall, but a very fire hydrant-esque task in Drew Dober. And guys, I am going with my man, Drew Dober, in this fight. Now, Dober on a 3-fight losing streak, not a very good look. Obviously, he had that matchup against Moicano where it was kind of, he was tagging Moicano, but Moicano just kind of overpowered on the ground. So that is what it is. You had Silva, where him and Dober were having a scrap back and forth. Gene Silva's just out-damage him. And then obviously we saw what happened in the last matchup with Dober. He got KO'd, unfortunately. I am hopeful that is not the end of the Crimson Chin that Drew Dober has. I think that Drew Dober has a very textbook style with his striking, a southpaw striker, continuously kind of moving forward. Very, I would say, basic, but not in a bad way. He has basic boxing combinations, right? He's kind of throwing the jab out there, maybe a jab straight, throwing the hooks, right? He loves to throw the hooks and mix in the uppercuts too. But he's not really doing the craziest of things in terms of an Ilia Topuria where I'm going to hit you 3 to the body, overhand, left hook, back to the body. Drew Dober's a lot more calculated in the fact that he's kind of just pressuring his opponents against the cage until he can find that clean, lead right hook since he's a southpaw, or, obviously he still has that rear overhand as well. Drew Dober just has some dynamite in his hands, believe it or not. Although, he's only got 41% of his wins by KO, I feel like he is one of those guys that, Bobby Green, let's just try to think of some of these other ones. I can't think of them right now, but he's got some KOs over guys that, obviously, Bobby Green's not someone who's always had the best chin, but Dober has that ability to wear damage pretty well and then find a shot and change the course of a fight that he's losing. And in this case, Prepolec, I think, did show some really good striking in his matchup against Saint Denis. I just don't think he is going to be able to outlast Drew Dober in there. I could be wrong, but I'm going with Drew Dober to win. And I think Drew Dober can likely get this win. Prepolec's never been knocked out. I feel like Dober, if he doesn't get a finish, it's likely to be that's so fucking stupid. If he doesn't get a finish, it's likely to be a decision is what I was about to fucking say. I think that Dober, given that I look at this and I'm thinking, okay, Prepolec's never been finished by KO. I could see Dober hurting him and maybe getting a sub. But I think it's more likely that Drew wins by decision. Maybe these guys just kind of scrap it out, but Drew Dober's got the heavier, more thudding shots, and he ends up getting the win. But guys, Prepolec could go out there and just starch him out. You never know, right? This is MMA. This is UFC. This is why we watch. So we'll see what happens. All right, guys, our next matchup, we got Memphis' very own Danny Barlow. I'm rocking with Danny Barlow. I love me some Memphis rap music. You can never go wrong with some hustle and flow. You can never go wrong with, 3-6 Mafia, some Young Dolph. Rest in peace. Project Pat, represent. Going up against Djorden Santos. Now, in this matchup, guys, it's pretty interesting. Djorden Santos lost to Ozzy Diaz at 185, so he's dropping down for this fight. And sorry, it looks like I forgot to put the date of his last fight. But regardless, I am going with Danny Barlow in this one, guys. I think that Djorden Santos, obviously, when we look at his wins, he does have a bit of a dangerous style here. He's kind of a mixed bag fighter. He's got subs, he's got KOs. But I'm thinking that Danny Barlow at not only, only a couple years older here, but Danny Barlow being 6'2", 79-inch reach, and he is a fighter who fights very well with his range. He's not a guy that is this super tall, lanky guy that can't seem to establish range. He does very well with establishing range. And actually, I know he did get KO'd pretty bad in his last fight against Patterson. And at first, I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, this is a fluke. This is not a fluke, but this is a fraud check moment. I think that a lot of us were reminded that Sam Patterson's really fucking good. And Danny Barlow coming up against Sam Patterson in this weight class is a bit of an anomaly because Sam Patterson himself is very tall and rangy. And I think that that is where Danny Barlow had a bit of an issue in that last matchup. He couldn't establish that range. He did have a reach advantage, I believe, but not enough to keep Sam Patterson off of him. And Sam Patterson's a very skilled fighter, has hands, has the ground game. He just was able to implement his own game plan, catch Danny Barlow. And I think once Danny Barlow got caught, he just did not know how to recover. And that is what it is, right? In this matchup, I am thinking Danny Barlow will be able to keep Djorden Santos at range, landing those long, crispy, straight shots that he throws, probably just tagging Santos, hurting him. Maybe he gets a finish. Maybe he hurts him and drops him in the first round and gets a finish. But I actually see it more likely just going to decision here, probably with Danny Barlow just getting the better of those striking exchanges. Maybe Santos tries to take it to the ground. Could potentially have a physicality advantage here, given he's fought bigger guys in a different weight class. But I am thinking that Danny Barlow can just go back out there, right the wrongs from his last fight, and put out a statement performance, whether it be a dominant decision or potentially a KO. The next fight we've got Bruno Silva versus HyunSung Park. So this matchup is a pretty fun one. I think, Bruno Silva is a guy, when you look at his record here, he's got a lot of finishes, right? 43% of his wins by KO, 28% by submission. He definitely has a lot of those tools in his bag. But guys, I have to say, at 35 years old, that's a big red flag for me, especially at flyweight. And also when you consider his last two matchups, he got KO'd pretty badly. And he's going up against HyunSung Park, who, although was dropped early and then submitted by Tainara in his last fight, he did come in on short notice for that, was preparing for a different opponent that's not Tatsuro Taira. I think he has some heavy hands, and I think that HyunSung Park is a killer. Once he gets a guy hurt, it's all she wrote. And I feel like in this matchup, knowing Bruno Silva coming off a few KO losses, I just feel like even if he's able to stay competitive in the early parts of round one, I just see HyunSung Park finding a shot, landing, maybe dropping Bruno Silva, maybe even putting him out cold. But I think if HyunSung Park drops him, he ends up either, latching up a submission, which we saw in HyunSung Park's fight against Hernandez. He was able to hurt him and choke him out like almost immediately. I'm pretty sure it was. That was his last fight before he got in there with Taira. So I am thinking that HyunSung Park gets the W here, and I think he probably wins by a round one finish, in my opinion. The next fight on the card, you already know, Davey Grant. Guys, Davey Grant, I need my man Davey to go out there with that same energy as Norman Osborn when they tried to fire him from his own company. I need Davey Grant to go out there and just, do you know how much I sacrificed for this? We need him to fucking just lose it and show Charles Jourdain that I'm still here. I'm the man, not you. Look at me. This is my town. This is my hometown. So Charles Jourdain is the hometown hero, 29 years old. I think he's a 95 or 96 baby, represent 96 myself. Charles Jourdain is a great fighter. I do love his style. His brother was also fantastic on Contender Series this season, so shout out to him. Just shout out to both of them. They're great fighters and fun to watch. In this matchup, though, guys, I'm leaning Davey Grant, and it might be a superstitious thing, but I picked Davey Grant in his last two fights. I was one of the only people to pick Davey Grant, and he beat Tavares and he beat Blackshear. And I am just thinking Davey Grant will be able to go out there and just use his style that is very tricky for a lot of guys to deal with. It's like a Muay Thai type style where he's constantly switching stances, constantly kicking the lead leg of his opponent, whether they be in orthodox or southpaw, and then constantly in their face throwing strikes. I think Charles Jourdain does very well in fights when he's kind of able to dictate that pace. He's also able to get his opponents to kind of like go into a striking game that he is leading, if you will. And I think Davey Grant is the antithesis of that. He is not going to play that game with Charles Jourdain. We saw this against Blackshear, right? Blackshear got that initial takedown and almost, he had Davey Grant in some precarious positions, but not enough for it to be anything serious. And I think people always forget Davey Grant is originally like a submission guy. He gets a lot of submissions, has an inverted triangle win, which was fucking beautiful when he got that against, I think that was a Sun Sao or maybe it was before, but regardless, Davey Grant has great ground game. So it's like, if this does go to the ground, Charles Jourdain definitely has, that ability to find those submissions. But I am thinking Davey Grant is going to just stay elusive on the feet, land those strikes, and probably get this one done by decision, just being a frustrating style for Charles Jourdain. Now, Charles Jourdain has definitely proven me wrong in the past, and he has that ability to get a win here, guys. But I got to go with my man, the Norman or Osborne lookalike of Davey Grant. Next fight on the card, we got Kyle Nelson versus Matt Frevola. This one actually was kind of hard for me to decide on, guys, because when I look at these styles, I think, this is another matchup. Guys, they're very close in age, pretty big for the lightweight division, 71-inch reach for both of them. Both of them, 4-5, 5-5 in the UFC. And when you kind of look at their styles, they're both pretty well-rounded, have that ability to grapple and wrestle, but also killers on the feet, can definitely land those KO blows and get their opponent out of there quickly. I am going with Matt Frevola in this one only because now when I look at both of these guys, Matt Frevola is on a 2-fight KO streak. But when he got knocked out by Ziam, it was at the end of the fight, if I recall. And obviously Garcia just beat the brakes off Kyle Nelson. I just think that in this matchup, and when I look at who these guys have fought, Matt Frevola is the only guy to ever, not only guy, he's the first guy to KO Drew Dober in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. He dropped Dober and got a win by KO, which was shocking for a lot of people because I don't think anyone has seen that yet at that point. So Frevola also, got that win over Azatar. Not that Azatar is this world beater, but he was 13-0. And Frevola also has that training with, Merab, has that training with Aljo, has the training with Matt Serra and Ray Longo. I think that he will be the more skilled guy if things get to the ground. He's going to have a better wrestling acumen and be able to overpower Kyle Nelson, maybe get a sub on the ground. But I likely see this one being, if neither one of them gets finished, Frevola wins by decision is my opinion. Now, Kyle Nelson definitely could win by decision himself, but I'm thinking Frevola just implements that game plan, can probably land a really hard shot on the feet and drop Kyle Nelson, going for a sub, get some ground and pound. Or if it goes to decision, I see Frevola at least edging out 2 of the rounds. I could see it being like a close round 1 situation. Frevola comes back out and just steamrolls round 2. And then round 3 could be a toss up and maybe it gets like a split decision for the other way, right? But I'm thinking Frevola, if it goes to decision, I could see him edging out at least 2 of the 3 rounds and getting that nod his way. I would like for him to get a finish so we don't have to worry about that, but we can't always get what we want. The next fight on the card, we got Cody Gibson versus Aoriqileng. I don't know how to say his name, guys. I'm sorry. I got to get better at that. They deserve to have their names said correctly, so I'm going to get better at that, guys. That's a vow from Fight Feed here. So, Cody Gibson, right? I really like Cody Gibson. Although he's 38 and this is a smaller weight class, I think Cody Gibson's a gamer. He goes out there and always is trying to finish his opponents in any fight that he's in. Now, obviously, the getting choked out by Blackshear, not the greatest look. I think it was a choke out. I can't even fully remember. It might have been a Kimura, but regardless, I know he got subbed by Blackshear. I think that Cody Gibson, though, just brings that veteran-esque style to this matchup. He's kind of hectic in there and chaotic with the way that he approaches the fight. Always on that gas, landing. And he's also this guy that I feel like he almost likes to get hit so he can then return fire. And I just think that even though he's going to be at a disadvantage from an age perspective, he has those physical advantages like a 2-inch reach advantage, a 3-inch height advantage. Not to mention I guess not a significant professional record advantage. I don't even think he has the significant pro record advantage here. But when I look at, who these guys have fought, I guess, obviously Aoriqileng's been in there with actually probably some better opposition as of late. I'm just thinking that Cody Gibson, his style and his ability to not only have some really tricky combos on the feet, like has the ability to hurt his opponent on the feet. He also has some very scrappy grappling that I think will pose a lot of problems for Aoriqileng should it go there. I'm thinking Cody Gibson gets this one done, and I think he gets it done by decision. The next fight on the card, guys, we got Manon Fiorot versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. And guys, this one, I think a lot of people are definitely going Manon Fiorot here. And I can see why. Right? Manon Fiorot's got 87% takedown defense. She is a decorated kickboxer, has very good kickboxing. Also very physical for this weight class. Although she's not like the tallest of women in this class, she has a physical, like her physical attributes. She's just strong, very strong hips, makes it very difficult to take her down. We saw this on display against the likes of a Erin Blanchfield, who was, really like before she lost to Manon Fiorot was like next in line, right? And Manon Fiorot went out there and just outstruck her, stopped the takedowns. But we did see in moments, she had some trouble when Erin Blanchfield was able to get her down. One thing I will call out about Manon Fiorot, we saw this against Shevchenko, she is very good about stopping that initial takedown from her opponents. She doesn't do the greatest when there's that chain type wrestling where, hey, I'm going to shoot this takedown, but I'm going to then get to your back and find another way. And the reason that I got to go Jasudavicius here, guys, is she is fucking vicious with those takedowns. Like when she goes in to take her opponent down or get them in the clinch, she makes it a dirty fight every single time. And I am thinking, guys, I just think that Jasmine's durability and her grinding type game are just is an underrated style. And I think that when she brings that to this fight, especially, she's got a bit of a reach advantage. I think that she is going to give Fiorot trouble, especially because Jasudavicius absorbs damage pretty well, just tough as nails, does not get put out, has not been put out, right? When we look at her losses, she's only lost by decision. I think that if Fiorot tries to, front run and stay on the lead foot, pushing Jasudavicius back, I think that she could look like herself and look like an elite fighter. But I also think that when Fiorot doesn't find that ability or find a way to break Jasudavicius and Jasudavicius keeps it dirty throughout the fight, especially mixing in the grappling, I feel like Jasudavicius could make this a dirty, like back and forth style type fight, or even just completely steamroll with her grappling because it is a different type of style. I'm just thinking that Jasudavicius is going to be able to find a way to either keep this a dirty fight if it stays on the feet. She definitely has that size and that reach. So it's like Fiorot is not going to walk in there with this reach and height advantage that she always has. It's going to be pretty neck and neck, if you will. And I think that that's going to make things difficult for her. And if Jasudavicius especially can get into the clinch game and overpower in the clinch game, she also has that potential to just make it a dirty fight, land the better strikes, and either get a decision, or I could see her, although Fiorot's never been finished either, I could see Jasudavicius potentially getting that sub because of her style, because of how like awkward her style can be, but also that nonstop pressure and that cardio that she brings. I think that we're going to see Fiorot start to wilt and gas towards the end of this fight. And that is where Jasudavicius will shine, potentially picking up those later rounds. I'm definitely thinking it goes to decision because it's going to be hard to say either one of these women gets finished here. I'm going Jasmine Jasudavicius. I think that a lot of people are picking Fiorot. I just think Jasudavicius is on a huge win streak, has great skills. And I just think that she's going to be able to implement her game plan that is going to make things tricky for Fiorot. Fiorot is not one to mix in takedowns. She's pretty one-sided in the fact that she's kind of always keeping things in the feet and looking to land strikes, whereas Jasudavicius is going to be kind of mixing it up in all areas, whether it be the clinch, whether it be at standing at range, whether it be getting them to the ground or shooting those takedowns. I think she has a lot of different ways to win this fight. The next fight on the card, we got Marlon Cheeto Vera versus Eamon Zahabi. Guys, I got to say, I was really back and forth on this one. I almost picked Chito Vera. The reason I'm not going Chito Vera in this one is just obviously Chito Vera, he had that loss to O'Malley, which was devastating. O'Malley beat the shit out of him. And then, he goes up against Figgy, has trouble with the wrestling, the takedowns, also gets dropped, I think, at one point at the end of the fight. I just think that in this matchup, guys, although Chito Vera is bringing in, he's going to have that reach advantage. He's going to have a pretty significant age advantage here. I just think that he has kind of been stuck in this rut. Like, he's on this 2-fight losing streak. He hasn't fought in over a year. And Aiemann Zahabi is a very high IQ fighter. Not only is he a great fighter himself, but trained by his brother, I think, who's also a mastermind and worked with GSP. I think Aiemann Zahabi has all of those tools and resources because I think GSP was in his corner last fight. I'm sure he'll be there this time. He has those resources that can help pull him out of a fight he might be losing, right? When we saw in the last fight with Aldo, Zahabi got hurt, but was able to find a way to stay safe, stay in the fight. Aldo gasses out. Zahabi almost finishes him in the final round. So I am thinking Aiemann Zahabi gets the win here just by being a more well-rounded fighter. He's going to be able to mix in some of those other elements of the game with the wrestling and the grappling, where Chito Vera is not going to be finished, I don't think. I just think that Zahabi is likely not only just being the hometown guy, but having those different tools in his tool bag. He'll be able to find a way to get this one done. And I think it's going to be by decision, but he's going to win those rounds by just having the higher IQ, landing on the feet, probably mixing in the grappling when he needs to. But Chito Vera, guys, the reason I was having a hard time here is like, if Aiemann Zahabi gets clipped by Aldo, Chito Vera can definitely land on him too and finish him. Aldo's a great striker, but so is Chito Vera. That is one of the things that Chito Vera does very well. Also has some tricky kicks, the front kick, the lead roundhouse kick. He has those tools that make it a bit tricky for his opponents. I just think that Zahabi is going to be wise to some of those tricks that Mr. Vera will bring to this fight, and I think he gets it done, is the way I look at it. So I'm going Aiemann Zahabi to get it done, probably by decision. The next fight on the card, we got the co-main event between Kevin the Trailblazer Holland versus Mike Malott, guys. So this is a fun fight. It was hard for me at first to kind of break this one down and figure out who is going to get the W. I gotta say, guys, I am feeling like, obviously, I've picked Kevin Holland quite a bit. When I look at his last few fights, I got him correct on the Nelson and Luque fight. Rodriguez, I did not pick. I picked Holland, and yeah, unfortunately didn't go his way. And I got to say, guys, I was a bit worried about Kevin Holland in that last fight with Daniel Rodriguez because it was a bit of a war. We saw him take some damage. But in this matchup, guys, he's going to be not only younger by a year, but he's got that 2-inch height advantage. What is that? 8-inch reach advantage. Kevin Holland is a tough night at the office, especially for any of these welterweights. I am thinking, guys, that the reason I didn't go with Mike Malott, although Mike Malott's very skilled, we saw what happened when he went up against a similar body type in that of Neil Magny. Now, he won, I would say the first 2 rounds, but it was close. And I think that style, though, and that body type was very hard for Mike Malott to deal with. And he's going to be having a similar problem with Kevin Holland. The only issue, though, is I think Kevin Holland is a lot more dangerous on the feet, and he is a lot more dangerous on the ground as well. Kevin Holland has a black belt through Travis Lutter, who's like a jiu-jitsu ace in and of itself. Like, he's a decorated jiu-jitsu guy. And for him to have that black belt, it's not an easy feat. And in this case, guys, what I think, some of the tape study I did, I am feeling like Kevin Holland can likely get this one done by catching Mike Malott, maybe getting a KO, or doing a Kevin Holland special where he hurts him on the feet and then chokes him out. But Mike Malott, very tricky on the feet, also very technical, like keeps the high guard. But the thing that I noticed in some of my breakdowns that I did is Mike Malott has a weakness to the straight jabs and straight, punches from his opponents. And what I mean by that is because Mike Malott has this high guard, he has a very high but static guard, right? He's kind of always locked in place. He is kind of always leaning forward too, right? He's like kind of like this all the time walking in. And I think when he's entering that range to try to throw his own combinations or shoot, he kind of moves in a straight line. He doesn't have great lateral movement. That is a horrible sign when you're going up against a guy in Kevin Holland whose main weapons are that straight, he throws the jab, but it's more of his straight right hand that he can land on those guys and just put them out cold. We've watched it time and time again in the UFC. I think that Mike Malott is definitely open to those types of shots. And I think when we watched like Mike Malott versus Chuck Buffalo Radke, I thought Chuck Buffalo could catch him, but the thing is, Chuck Buffalo is not really a guy that's always throwing those straight punches. He's more of a like overhand and lead hook type guy, which I am thinking that's the complete opposite of what Kevin Holland will bring to this. And then also when we think about this, going back and watching Neil Magny versus Mike Malott, Neil Magny was consistently landing not only the jabs and the straights, to the head, but he was also investing early on to the body, which I think over the course of that fight really brought down that gas tank of Mike Malott, which ultimately allowed for Neil Magny to find that finish. But that finish really came by way of Neil Magny just not succumbing to the pressure of Mike Malott and staying in there. And I think Kevin Holland has that same ability here. And I also think he's going to have that physical advantage in the height. He's going to have the physical advantage in the reach. He's also, I think, probably a lot faster on the feet. And then when we also take into account Kevin Holland's previous fight with Luque, very good at mixing in those elbows, right? He's got those bony elbows like I do, where he just lands, and once he landed on Luque, one of those, it just swelled up the side of his head. I also think another thing that while Mike Malott has a very solid game and he has the potential to also hurt Kevin Holland, maybe drop him, hurt him, we'll have to see. Kevin Holland's been fighting quite a bit. So it's like, at what point do you see diminishing returns for, coming back too soon? But one thing I will say too, though, is if you go back and watch Mike Malott's like regional fights and other fights that he's had, he can sometimes overextend on his right hand. So when he throws his right cross, he overextends quite a bit. And I think that is something that when you're in there with a guy like Kevin Holland, who just look at Kevin Holland's fucking resume, 28-14. Yeah, he might be 50-50, but 15-11 in the UFC. This guy entered the UFC in 2018. So like that right there that just tells me that if Mike Malott is overextending on punches, that is something Kevin Holland is going to pick up on and see just based off his activity, based off his fight IQ. Kevin Holland does have solid fight IQ in that he's able to, find those punches and find that timing on his opponents where he can catch them off guard and hurt them badly. It happens almost in every one of his fights. He hurts, except for Khamzat. I mean, that was a whole different thing, but that was a whole other thing. We're not even going to talk about that one. But Kevin Holland has that ability to snipe his opponents. And I think that if he is watching Mike Malott kind of come forward, which Mike Malott's going to need to go forward to dictate this fight, Kevin Holland has all of the experience and tools to find that timing and land a shot that hurts Mike Malott. And I think once he does that, it could change the course of the fight entirely, bringing Kevin Holland a chance to get a submission, or perhaps he just knocks Mike Malott out cold. I am thinking Kevin Holland gets the win here, but I can also see why people go the route of Mike Malott. I was having a hard time, but based off the things that I've looked into, based off the previous matchup with Neil Magny, I just think that this is a bad matchup for Mike Malott, and I can see Kevin Holland getting this one done. All right, guys, the final fight of the night, we've got Rainier de Ridder versus Brendan All-In Allen. So RDR and All In. So, guys, this one's actually an interesting one. When I first heard of the matchup, obviously, we were all excited for Fluffy. Can't wait to see him fight again. But when I first heard this, and this happens quite a bit with me, I was like, why do I see like Brendan Allen somehow maybe getting a KO here? Like, why do I feel like Brendan Allen might be able to like knock Rainier de Ridder out? I know it statistically speaking and just skill set wise, probably not going to happen. But I just had that feeling of like, I feel like Brendan Allen has definitely made leaps and bounds in increasing that skill set into the striking. I think that he has that potential to outstrike Rainier de Ritter on the feet, especially if they stay at range. But where I feel like this is going to go wrong for Brendan Allen is that it's a bit of a short notice matchup for him. He's at a size disadvantage here, where I feel like in a lot of the fights where he does better, it's like he usually has that size advantage, but in this one, he's not going to have that. Rainier de Ritter is going to have a significant reach, height advantage. And then also, I think the way that Rainier de Ritter fights, he has a very solid clinch game. And I feel like when I've seen Brendan Allen fight, I just don't know where his clinch game is at. I know that it's not at the level of Rainier de Ritter. And what we saw from Rainier de Ritter, even against a veteran in Robert Whittaker, is he's able to just implement that clinch game himself, landing those knees to the body, landing shit upstairs, landing those punches upstairs, and then mixing in those takedowns, mixing in the grappling. Rainier de Ritter, although Brendan Allen has that grappling background too, Rainier de Ritter, I think, is going to just be way too much for Brendan Allen on the ground. I could just see Rainier de Ritter continuously over the course of this 5-round fight, landing that battering ram of a knee that he throws, which he really throws that shit like the SWAT throw a battering ram, like he's trying to break into a fucking a house that's got drugs in it. He throws it and it's hard, it lands. He's very accurate with it. I just think that knowing Brendan Allen and watching how he kind of lost that steam and gassed out against Fluffy, he, in my opinion, lost to Chris Curtis as well. I think that when you are in a 5-round matchup against a guy like Rainier de Ritter, who also can gas out, but not so much from a grappling perspective. I think against Whittaker, he gassed out from being hurt and tagged. Whereas in this fight, I see what I see happening is Rainier de Ritter goes out there. He just does what he does, right? He's landing that knee at range, maybe landing a few strikes on the feet, like some awkward overhands, but then mixing in that grappling and that clinch game to tire out Brendan Allen. And I think as this fight hits the later rounds, we're going to see a gassed out Brendan Allen, kind of just fighting to survive, where maybe he's able to, he's a scrappy guy, very solid fighter too. I think he could definitely have that fight IQ to stay in the fight and go to a decision, but I just don't see Brendan Allen winning the later rounds. Now, if Brendan Allen is to win, I think it happens by way of like a knockout, to be honest with you guys. Like I could just see him like catching Rainier de Ritter, hurting him, and then just finding those shots on the ground. But Rainier de Ritter did do a good job when Whittaker tried to do that. He snatched those gloves up, and it is what it is. I just feel like Rainier de Ritter, if he implements his game plan the way that I think he will just basically overpower, get a late finish, whether it be like 3rd, 4th, 5th round by sub or even by way of like a knockout. The knockout's not as likely, but potentially, he could hurt Brendan Allen on the feet and then maybe land some ground and pound. But where I see it landing is Rainier de Ritter getting a decision win over Brendan Allen, potentially a late sub. I don't know why. I don't see this fight ending super quickly, to be honest with you guys. But my opinion is that if it does end by finish, I think it probably happens in round 3 or later. And then obviously if it doesn't happen, it's a decision. And I think that decision is likely to go to Mr. RDR. A lot of things on the line here. This could potentially be a title fight matchup, whoever wins, but we shall see. That is my official breakdown, guys, for UFC Vancouver. So thank you for watching. Tried to make this one shorter, but I rambled a bit. Happy to be back in the office, though. And I would love to hear from you guys. Please comment below your thoughts. Do you like having all the info? Do you want me to not do that? I want these videos to be informative, entertaining, and something that you want to come to learn or just see who I'm picking so that you can make your own informed decisions. So just let me know, guys. I would love to hear from you who you think is going to win in either the main, co-main, any of these fights. Let me know if you think I've got it completely wrong. And dude, be honest with me. Be brutally honest. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I've had people on my channel come on into my comments and kind of trash my pick, right? And I will always be open to that. And I appreciate it because as long as you're engaging, that's helpful for me. And the reason I do this is to engage with fans of MMA because I'm a huge fan myself. So would love to hear from you guys. If you haven't, make sure you subscribe to Fight Feed, and I will see you all in